Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please welcome to the stage Anne Devine.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anne Devine of Ashanti Leadership and Professional Development Services, as well as a board member at Halifax Chamber. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by treaties of peace and friendship, which the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. As you know, Emancipation Day was just past us on 1st of August, and you may have seen the flag hanging over the bridge, flying over the MacDonald Bridge. Nova Scotia's history with our underserved and equity-seeking populations goes back as far as its inception. Emancipation Day is an important celebration of the historical end of slavery in the British Empire. Thank you, Mr. Burrill, for leading that. We have come a long way, but we have much more work to do to ensure equal and holistic representation in our business and government. It is an historic time for members of the Black and Indigenous community. For the first time in our history, in the historic Black communities, North Preston, East Preston, and the Cherrybrook area, there are 3 new Black candidates representing all parties. And I have to tell you, if I may deviate from my script a little, it gives me chills because my friend Angela Simmons is sitting right here, as well as Archie Beals. He's a big brother to many of us, and Cortez Simmons. So it's a wonderful time, and we wish you all the very best. And we'd like to acknowledge that there are many more diverse folks running across our province, and it is just wonderful for Nova Scotians, don't you think? The more representation we have, the more diverse the community in Nova Scotia, the better our decision-making process, and we all, as Nova Scotians, working together for the betterment of our society, our economy, our youth, and our generations to come. So you can tell I am excited and to hear from our leaders today. And I look forward to their thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility, which is very important in our government, and how they plan to move us forward. So at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our moderator, Patrick Sullivan, President and CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. I think you've just generated a lot more excitement than the election has seen so far today. So thank you very much. But I know it's going to get more exciting as we get the leaders up on the stage. So thank you very much, Anne, for that. And thank you to everyone for tuning in today. We do have a hybrid event today. So we have slightly more than 100 people in the room today, but we do have many more people watching us on Facebook and on the Halifax Chamber website. So thank you very much. And thank you to our presenting sponsor, the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, also known as NSAR, for helping us put on today's event. I'd also like to thank our host partner, the Downtown Halifax Business Commission, and thank you to our community partners, the Black Business Initiative, National Public Relations, and Stuart McKelvey. Whenever an election is called, we recognize our role at the Chamber in bringing the candidates and the voters together. It's important that we understand the platforms, and of course, it's very important that everyone who's able registers to vote and then votes. You can check your voting registration status easily online at electionsnovascotia.ca. So 2020 and 2021 have been interesting years, if I can put it that way, certainly challenging. And if that wasn't challenging enough, now we've got a provincial election, as we do expect every so often. Here at the Chamber, we look forward to the opportunity of hearing from both our members and the party leaders on the priorities for the province. As we're a nonpartisan organization, it is our goal to provide our members with access to all the parties, information on their platforms, and the chance to ask questions that matter to them. Today, we're bringing the candidates together to spark a dialogue on the issues affecting our members. We know that COVID has had a huge impact on the business community for more than a year, but COVID will eventually subside, and other issues like taxation, regulation, red tape, sourcing talent, housing, and labor standards will remain. Over the past 18 months and 112 meetings, the Chamber has worked with dozens of business organizations, some of which I've already mentioned, labor groups, numerous stakeholders from across the province, including representatives from all levels of government. So working with the Nova Scotia Business Labour Economic Coalition, or as we affectionately call it, NSBLEC, calls to bring awareness to the circumstances that COVID has created, to ensure timely and positive policy changes, and to build and maintain those integral connections during a difficult time. And we certainly hope that this relationship can continue with whichever party forms government after August 17th. As some of you know, the NSBLEC has had a number of policy wins throughout the year at all levels of government. Some of those include the removal of parking fees, the extension of patio season, reduced alcohol regulations, and most significantly, the financial support provided through grants and loans. Together with good health protocols and smart decisions from many Nova Scotians, we've been able to keep many of the business doors open, pivoted to deliveries and takeout, and move through the reopening phases faster than planned. So while it's been a very, very difficult 16 to 17 months, I'm proud of all the members of our community for sticking together. The Chamber does submit an annual pre-budget submission, you can find it on our website, which outlines our recommendations for government and includes feedback from our task forces, conversation with members, and pillars of our strategic plan. This year, our submission focused on economic recovery, tourism, COVID testing, and of course, financial support for the business community. These are not party issues, but rather recommendations to any organization that would become government to create a positive business environment for our municipality and all of Nova Scotia. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions. We received far too many questions that we could ask today. So I really appreciate that. We will provide the questions to each of the parties and to see if they can answer those and get back to us. But we will get through as many as time allows today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our presenting partner, Donna Malone, the NSAR president. Donna.
Thank you, Patrick. The Nova Scotia Association of Realtors is very pleased to be the presenting partner for this event. Thank you to the Chamber, our co-sponsors, and the candidates for joining us today. NSAR represents over 1,800 salespeople and brokers across the province. We are the voice of real estate in Nova Scotia. Realtors are also a key component of the local community. In 2020, the average housing transaction through the NSAR MLS system generated almost $48,000 in spin-off spending. That's over $670 million contributed to our economy. In 2020, MLS resale housing activity also created an estimated 4,400 jobs in Nova Scotia. The real estate industry is proud to be such a major contributor to our economy and to our vibrant communities. But it's about more than that. It's about housing. Realtors play a key role in working with our elected officials to strengthen our housing markets. For example, realtors in Nova Scotia helped to create the Down Payment Assistance Program, helping over 635 families in our province purchase homes since 2016. We also played a part in Nova Scotia's Affordable Housing Commission, engaging the committee and our leaders to look at the entire housing spectrum, because housing is a spectrum. From community and social housing to long-term care, rentals, resale homes, and new builds. As you all know, we are on the verge of a housing crisis. Inventory and vacancy rates are extremely low in HRM and across the province. Without housing, our communities suffer. But we can all play a part in solving our housing shortage, from allowing municipalities more control over housing measures to easing the tax burden on buyers and creating more rental units. Realtors have solutions to build better communities together. Today, we're very excited to hear what our candidates can do for our businesses, our communities, and our citizens. Realtors believe everyone should have a place to call home. Today, we're looking forward to hearing how each of these candidates will make that a reality. Thank you again to the Halifax Chamber for the opportunity to sponsor today's event. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Donna. Thank you very much, Donna. As someone who moved this summer, I can certainly speak to the spin-offs that I'm now contributing to the economy as I purchase tools and all sorts of things for my new home. And now it's time to meet the candidates. In no particular order, let me welcome first Iain Rankin from the Liberal Party. Tim Houston from the Progressive Conservative Party. And Gary Burrill from the New Democratic Party. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and to provide an opening statement. We did do a random draw earlier this morning, and we will start out with Tim Houston. Tim.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you to the Chamber. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this morning, and of course, Iain and Gary. As I've been crisscrossing the province on the bus we call the Solutions Express, hearing a lot of feedback from Nova Scotians about the issues, and we're also receiving a lot of honks and waves and a few other hand gestures as well from people as we travel down the road. It occurred to me this morning that the Solutions Express is not quite as fast as Andre DeGrasse, who won gold medal for Canada this morning.
Oh, right.
But And of course, Ellie's fourth place finish, we're all proud of her for that. But as we're traveling the province on the bus and listening to Nova Scotians on their doorsteps from Digby to Glace Bay and of course in HRM, one thing we know that as diverse as this province is, Nova Scotians are united on one thing, and that is that we need to fix the healthcare system. And I think most of you know, anyone that's certainly following the campaign knows that I've made healthcare a number one focus of our team for sure. That's because we can't have a healthy economy if we don't have healthy people. We need to focus on healthcare. A failure to invest in people, a failure to invest in healthcare is a failure to lead. And each of you know in your own businesses, you need to invest in your people. And what we've seen in this province, we have 70,000 people that don't have access to a family doctor. They feel that failure to lead every single day. But I'll tell you that change is coming, leadership is coming, and the PC Party has put forward a very bold, innovative platform on how to fix the healthcare crisis that we have. We've detailed our solutions that will get more doctors, will get you a doctor. That includes a pension plan. We'll get people access to the mental health care they need, and will help our seniors age with dignity. These are solutions that will increase the productivity of the province, and we know that's what's necessary. But we also know that these things cost money, and we're the only party that's put out a fully costed platform. We've been very upfront about the investment that is required. It is significant, and it will take time. And as an accountant, I understand the numbers. I understand that the details matter. That's why we've been so clear on the details. We in this province need to think big. We can lead the entire country as an economic engine, and that's why we put forward such an innovative platform that can grow our economy with 3 pillars. And I look forward to talking about that this morning, but I'll tell you that the platform we've put forward, 2 of the major economists in the country have said that's bold, that's innovative, that's the thinking we need. So if you like something you hear this morning, hire us, and let's get to work fixing healthcare and building this economy. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tim. And now over to Gary.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Robert Frost wrote a poem that was quite well known that began with the words, "Two roads diverged." And that's exactly where we are in the election before us at the moment in Nova Scotia. We've been living, you all know, through the greatest economic contraction in the lifetime of everyone under the age of 85. And the question before us in the election is, what is the road best to take us to the post-COVID recovery for Nova Scotia? Now, Mr. Rankin's proposal is that we move out of the recently accumulated deficits over a 4-year period. And this is a startling proposal. It will make Nova Scotia the only province in Canada with a deficit recovery timeline that is this short. Much more common are the 6, 7, and 8-year frameworks of even Canada's most fiscally conservative jurisdictions. Mr. Rankin proposes to accomplish this by means of a $209 million reduction in government spending in the year following the election. I and the NDP are proposing a better road, a path to recovery by means of expansion, a path of stimulating consumer spending and expanding labor force participation and GDP by addressing the real needs of the people of our province as these have become apparent to us through the pandemic. This means, in part, permanent rent control, $15 minimum wage, because we must address the core deficiency of consumer purchasing power in our province. 2, free school-based before and after school care for elementary and pre-primary children, opening the door to the increased labor force participation that these moves created in Quebec and in BC. And 3, providing economic stimulus through the investments in renewables and retrofitting on the path to making Nova Scotia a place where we're doing our part to contain global warming to 1.5 degrees. I want to say of these 2 paths that the second path, the path that we are proposing in the NDP, the path of expansion through addressing the needs that have become apparent to us through the pandemic, this is a path that will work. I want to say of the first path, the path of cutting and restricting and constricting government revenue as we move this period of recovery, this is a plan that will not work. Because you cannot cut or constrict your way out of this scope of an economic contraction. That path, the path that tries to do this, is fiscally foolhardy. It will result not only in the curtailment of necessary services and the imposition of real hardship, but also in the choking off of the economic recovery before it's established. So two roads diverge, and this is the choice that is before the people of our province. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. And now on to Iain.
Thank you, Patrick. And to our business leaders, I want to thank you for your work and support over the last year. It's been extremely important during the pandemic, and I know that locking down quickly was difficult for you, for your businesses, your employees, and your families. We had to make some difficult decisions to get through the third wave quickly. And without your help, and that of all Nova Scotians, we could not have come through a very difficult period of time the way we did. Know that your sacrifices have paid off, and know that they are appreciated. Throughout the crisis, we were noticed across the country of our solid leadership during the pandemic. Locking down quickly proved to be the right approach. Our central booking system and our age-based approach for vaccines proved to be the right approach. Our case numbers remain low. We lead the country in vaccinations, and our province is now on the road to an economic recovery. But we need to stay focused. How you recover as business leaders, how our province recovers, is the key to our future success and our economy. We have this moment to get it right, and this is why this election is so important. Our financial position as we entered the pandemic gave us the capacity to support small businesses and the tourism sector through our rebate programs and quick start initiatives. It allows us to continue that support. I said that our government will support businesses when it is needed, and we've done that. Throughout the last 5 months as your Premier, we made targeted investments in areas that needed support and to people that needed the support the most. But what I won't do is saddle future generations with a reckless spending plan and put our future prosperity at risk. Our plan is responsible and targets funding in critical areas, and it builds on what investments we've made in the 21-22 budget. We've done things like expand computer science programs at our 4 major universities. Building on that, we're making a transformative investment in NSCC so that we can boost skilled trades and training for healthcare workers. We continue to replace and build modern healthcare facilities across the whole province, including HRM. We signed a monumental $10 a childcare agreement with the federal government to secure $600 million in funds to help families. And we're increasing affordable housing stock based on the evidence-based approach from the Commission. My Economic Growth Council I announced to this chamber in April recognized housing as an opportunity for an economic growth sector. The Council also recognized that Nova Scotia can become a startup and scale-up capital in this country. Our plan builds on a lot of this progress. It includes wise investments, continues to reduce red tape for businesses, and ensures that this recovery will be more equitable and better for the environment. I'm proud of Nova Scotians and what we've achieved together. And it's in that same spirit that we can take on these complex challenges facing our province right now. I'm proud of our candidates in this race and the excitement of their growing teams as I travel across the province. I look forward to discussing our vision today and taking your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for your introductory statements. And we're now going to reset the time clock. So just a reminder, the clock is in front of you. You will now have 1.5 minutes to respond in our first section to the following question. The question is, Nova Scotia's downtowns and main streets in particular have seen declines in customers, office workers, tourist event attendees, and students. Due to the pandemic, what investments and programs do you see as necessary to revitalize these downtowns and main streets? And we're going to start with Iain.
Thank you, Patrick. As I travel across the province, what I'm seeing is a lot of optimism for the future. We went through a difficult period of time, but our shutdown in the third wave was much shorter than the other provinces who tried to take an incremental approach to their restrictions. So I see that optimism, and we need to tap into that recovery that's underway. We're making key investments in making sure that we are a partner Things like the Charlotte Street investment in Sydney to revitalize that downtown core. We have the same kind of potential here in Halifax. If you look at the Argyle Street redevelopment, if you look at what's happening at Spring Garden Road, the province has a duty to be a partner in those types of projects. What we also need to do is ensure that we can kickstart the tourism sector and bring people down to the main streets of downtown areas across the province. That's why we came out with an aggressive $18 million package for our tourism sector that includes millions of dollars for cultural events and events to bring people back downtown. This was a difficult period of time for businesses, but they need our support. Another initiative that I think will help a lot for our small businesses is our efficiency programs, an aggressive program that will grant up to 80% of their costs. These are the types of public investments that will help our environment, that will grow jobs in a growing sector in the green economy, and reduce electricity bills for our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to Tim. Nova Scotia's downtowns and main streets have seen declines in customers. I'm summarizing this time. What investments and programs do you see as necessary to revitalize them?
Well, thank you, Patrick. And who doesn't love our downtowns and main streets? I mean, when we're around the province, we just see that there are people on the streets bumping into each other, talking to each other, happy. We have a great province with beautiful towns, and our downtowns are a big part of that. So what we need to do is recognize that government can't do it alone. So we need to work with small business. We need to work with industry to get people back downtown. And one of the policies, we know politicians are all and say buy local, and they cut the ribbons, but then that's it. That's generally it. So one of the things I'm really excited about, and what the economists have been excited about our platform, is our Nova Scotia Loyal program. It's actual government policy that will incentivize Nova Scotians to buy local products. It's a points program. We all love our points. We know Nova Scotians love our points. But when you buy a local product, when you support a local merchant, you'll whip out your Nova Scotia Loyal card and you'll scan it and you'll get points, which you then use for government services, like renewing your driver's license, or at a Crown Corp, like Nova Scotia Liquor Corp. But you'll accumulate points. It's actually a government policy that will incentivize people to buy local, support local, get out into our towns and main streets, and actually get our economy going. This is a really exciting program that will stimulate a lot of economic activity, create a lot of jobs, and you'll be getting your Nova Scotia Loyal cards this fall, folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Mr. Burrill, Nova Scotia's downtowns and main streets in particular have seen declines in customers, office workers, tourist event attendees. What investments and programs do you see as necessary to revitalize them?
Thanks. This question, of course, looks different according to the part of the province where you are. Our downtowns and our communities are highly diverse from this point of view. When we look, for example, I think your question is about the whole province at the CBRM, particularly germane to the downtown revitalization program is the library. We are committed to the provincial portion of that funding and to increasing the capacity of the CBRM to carry out its responsibilities of the revitalization of its many downtowns. But in general, I think this whole issue points to the necessity of targeted small business support. So we hear across the province a kind of a dismay from many entrepreneurs and small businesses that there has been major support directed towards the big business, the major corporate sector through the pandemic, particularly through the $70 million tax break on the eve of the pandemic, and that the same kind of robustness and enthusiasm for support has not been there for small and medium-sized business. In our view, that targeted support is necessary. And I would also say, looking particularly to the part of the province outside of the HRM and the CBRM, that part of revitalization for downtowns and small business has to do with reestablishing the mandate for rural and regional economic development that was formerly a part of that department before it became the Department of Business, now the Department of Inclusive Growth.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Burrill. Sorry, I had said at the beginning, well, I didn't say it to you, but I certainly said it to the leaders that I would try to stick to Mr. Burrill, Mr. Rankin, and Mr. Houston, and I, of course, immediately forgot that as I stood up here. So I've now called them Tim, Iain, and Gary, and I'm hoping that they will allow me to continue to do that, because that's what I have written in my notes. So they look like they're letting me go along with that, so thank you. Thank you to the leaders.
There. Yes, Pat.
There we go. If only that was true. Yes. That's great. Thank you. Okay. So on to another question. And this time we'll start with Gary. What is your plan for the 2022 tourism season? No sector was hit as hard. And what will you do or your party do to help that sector regain its momentum in 2022?
There's no question that the tourism sector, with the exception of the creative economy, has been the hardest hit part of our economy through the COVID period. And certainly innovative approaches to support are called for. One I think very helpful program is one which has been designed by the MLA for Dartmouth South, Claudia Chender, that we need in government. This is part of our platform to propose a program of incentivizing through the taxation system small tourism operators as they would experiment and innovate to find various ways of extending the season on either side. We recognize this is particularly important. And I would also say that in the NDP, we see this upcoming period as shaped very much by the transition to recovery, and we think this needs to be shaped through an economic recovery task force, and that we need to have many, many voices at that table, one of which needs to be, and not be excluded, small business, speaking for, amongst others, the tourism sector.
Great, thank you very much. Now, I have screwed up yet again, so I apologize for that. So what we were to do was to provide 1-minute rebuttal to each of the candidates for the first question. So I'm going to ask the candidates what they would like to do. So I'm going to refresh your memory again. The Nova Scotia's downtowns and main streets have seen declines of customers. So you all spoke to that. So is there anything any of you would like to say about the other's position? I'll get this right next time. But anything that any of you would like to say about the other's comments initially, and then I apologize, we'll get on to the second part that Gary has already answered. So thank you, Gary, for that. So any comments, and we will have 1 minute at this point in rebuttal.
I'm good to go forward. I don't know.
Yeah, no apology needed. We're good to go.
Okay.
We might as well keep going.
All right, then we'll keep going. Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, that makes life a little easier for everybody. So Mr. Burrill has already answered the second question on the plan for the 22 tourism season. And now we're going to Tim Houston. What is your plan for the 2022 tourism season? No sector was hit as hard. What will you do to help that sector regain its momentum in 2022?
Thank you, Patrick, for that. And the PC Party, I personally am very pro-population growth. And the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney talked about the population of Canada reaching 100 million people by the turn of the century, and I think that's something that was very achievable. That would be 3 million people in this province. So I know that tourism, the film industry, all of these things are how we attract people to live here. So tourism is of utmost importance for so many reasons, but certainly for the long-term sustainability of our province. And I know that I meet a lot of people traveling, particularly on the campaign, but otherwise, who have moved to this province because they came here on vacation. And now when they come here, they're surprised about the healthcare system and they can't find a doctor or something like that. But the tourism opens an opportunity for this province in so many ways. And I believe that people travel because they want to go somewhere. They actually want to go to a destination, and this province is full of wonderful destinations. That's a different approach than the government has used, which the government has really advocated that people travel because it's easy to get there. They try to make it just easy, but people actually travel because they want to go somewhere, and then they figure out how to get there. So in our platform, what we talk about is regional decision making. Every region of this province has its own advantages. Some are on season, some are off season, some are both. But working with the different regions of the province to make sure that they're supported as they market the strengths of their province. But I love tourism, I love our film industry, and all because it leads to the long-term sustainability of growing the population of this province. So it's critical that we get that tourism industry rolling again.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tim. And Iain, question: what is your plan for the 2022 tourism season? And how will you help that sector regain its momentum in 2022?
Tourism here is such an integral part of our economy. We have such a great product here from one end of the province to the other. That's why Nova Scotia is where people want to be right now. More and more Canadians and people from across the world are recognizing us, not just because of our strong pandemic response, but people are flocking here and they want to stay. Right before the pandemic hit, we had record banner tourism years, and we need to build on that momentum that we have. We've made strategic investments as we're recovering from the pandemic with an $18 million package to support some of those sectors that have been hit the hardest. The accommodation sector, our small businesses have been hit hard. What we also have occurring across the globe is the fourth industrial revolution and digital. We need to ensure that we're training people at our universities and our community colleges, opening up our new IT campus to take in 100 students. And the way that we're supporting our tourism sector is by allowing grant opportunities so that they can become more competitive. The $5,000 grants that are going out to tourism sector, building on a previous program, we're extending that out to small businesses as well. This is the way that we continue to be more competitive and support placemaking. We reference that for our downtowns. That's consistent in our rural communities too. Supporting, ensuring that we have more modern infrastructure, more active transit in communities, more livable, walkable, vibrant communities. And these are the things that we've been investing in over the last number of years. Our internet program, getting high speed out into communities. This is why more people are coming to this province. Tim referenced population growth. Really proud of the work that we've done there. There's some overlap, obviously. Other than British Columbia, Nova Scotia is seeing more in-migration than any other province in the country.
I think we'll have to cut you off there, Iain. Thank you very much. Just a reminder to everybody on the 1.5 minutes. And now we'll move on to the 1 minute opportunity for rebuttal. So would anyone like to comment on any of the others? Nope.
Good.
You're good? And Iain?
I could keep going, but I guess...
I guess you could keep going. No, that's right. Sorry. Well, thank you very much all for that. We'll now, so that was, those were some questions on the business committee. We'll now begin to focus on the economy. And this time we'll begin with Iain. So if the economy roars back, as many economists are predicting, interest rates will rise, inflation will take a significant leap, the average citizen will be ill prepared to deal with these changes. How will your party limit taxation increases to not only pay for COVID responses and improve health care, but also minimize the impacts of a rapidly going economy on those that have suffered most during the pandemic?
Really important question right now. In 8 years of government, we haven't once increased taxes or fees. We need to make sure that we are living within our means. The spending that is proposed by both opposition parties are in the billions, adding structural deficits that we cannot incur right now. This is about protecting our services in the long run. I heard Gary reference a supposed cut. There are no cuts to services under this government. We need to slow the growth of expenses. We see opportunities to invest in people, $10 a day childcare. Those are the types of programs that we need right now. Because of our booming population that we talked about already, we need to make sure we're investing in housing so people have access to a safe place to live. We have challenges, of course, right now, but we need to make sure that we're focused on prudent spending so that we are not either raising taxes in the future or putting our very services that Nova Scotians deserve and expect at risk. And that is a core to our strategy. Of course, we need to invest in skills training and get the fundamentals right so that we can grow a strong economy, so that we can raise more revenue to address these real tough issues around healthcare, education, and supporting people that need the support the most. But this government has clearly shown that we will keep taxes low, and every time we had an opportunity, when we got back to balance 4 times, we reduced taxes for small businesses. We reduced taxes for income tax. We're going to continue to do that, and both those parties voted against those initiatives. Both times we reduced taxes, and every one of those balanced budgets.
Okay, so on to Gary, and the same question, Gary. If the economy roars back, as many economists are predicting, interest rates will rise, inflation will take a significant leap. How will the average citizen be prepared to deal with these difficult changes? How will your party limit taxation increases to not only pay for COVID, but for those who have suffered greatly during the pandemic?
Yes, thank you. So our focus in the NDP is on spending smart. So today in Nova Scotia, in our little province, every day we spend $1 million at housing people in the hospital who aren't hospital patients because we didn't make the smart investments to have the place so much less expensive for them in the nursing homes, which is where they belong. Last year we spent almost $2 million housing people in hotels because we hadn't made the intelligent investments previously in the social housing that was needed. So we need to be spending smarter. And in my judgment, the smarter kind of taxation policy would not have included the very imprudent tax break for the major corporate big business sector on the day prior to the pandemic, thereby tying the hands of government for the last year and a half, putting the government to the tune of $70 million in a place where it has not been able to provide the targeted support for small and medium-sized businesses that has been needed.
Thank you very much, Gary. And on to Tim. If the economy comes back, as economists are predicting, how will your party limit taxation increases to not only pay for COVID responses and improved health care, but minimize the impacts on those that have suffered most?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick, and I appreciated Ian's bit of levity that I'm against tax breaks. I'm certainly not. What I say to Nova Scotians is we need to be upfront and honest about where we're at in this province, and where we're at in this province is healthcare's a mess. Big spending is required to fix healthcare after 8 years of neglect. So yeah, we put forward a very honest and open, fully costed platform about the cost, and it's roughly in the range of $500 million. But we have to spend the money because you can't build an economy with a healthcare system that's broken. And we put out a 10-year platform piece that shows we get back to balance in year 6. And these are the ideas, the economic ideas. I mentioned the economists. It's Jack Mintz and Donald Savoy, 2 leading economists in the country. When they looked at our economic plan, they went, wow, that's bold. That's innovative. That's the type of thinking that Canada needs. Because we can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, I mentioned the loyal, but the Better Paycheck Guarantee, will support those working families that you're talking about, Patrick. And under the Better Paycheck Guarantee, corporations will be forced to make a choice. Do they want to leave the money that they paid in corporate taxes with the government, or do they want to get half of it back and give it to the working families of this province? I think we can probably all get behind supporting the working families of this province. That's very specific government policy that will put more money in the hands of those working families that are struggling to pay groceries, struggling for housing, struggling to pay for gas.
I think we'll cut it off there, but thank you very much, Tim. Yes, Iain first.
So I do want to point out that incremental cost that he's referencing is on top of a $400 million increase in the healthcare budget. He's proposing close to $1 billion increase in this fiscal year in healthcare alone. We need to protect our core services in this province in order to have a strong economy. And if we get our economy going, then we can make those strategic investments. We have a plan. Businesses are looking for red tape reduction. That's why we have the biggest target we've ever had with $30 million for reducing regulatory burden to businesses. And these are the types of recommendations we got from our Economic Growth Council that has wide, diverse voices at the table, the type of recommendations that have been applauded by the CFIB, by the Canadian Business Council. I think the Halifax Chamber themselves had positive things to say of us endorsing those reports so that we can get out of the way of businesses that want to grow. They don't need a $200 million tax cut right now while we're facing the type of deficit that we do. That's opportunistic. We can't afford it right now. We need to make sure that we stay the course and ensure we protect our services.
We'll cut it off there. We'll go to Gary first.
So Mr. Rankin has said that in his view it is possible to take $209 million next year out of the budget of Nova Scotia without cutting any services. And if this indeed is possible, then the people of Nova Scotia are entitled to an explanation of how to do it. In my judgment, it cannot be done. And we remember very clearly what happened when the Liberals came to power 8 years ago. They conducted parallel types of program reviews, spoke about how it wasn't going to cause any reduction in services, and that's the time when we lost the film tax credit, when the Mental Health Association, the Schizophrenic Society, the CNIB, many others lost their provincial funding, and the whole Department of Rural and Economic Development was laid off. So if in fact you have a plan, Mr. Rankin, by means of which you can get $209 million out of a jurisdiction's this size's budget without cutting services to anybody, you owe it in this election to put it before the people of the province, not simply to assert it.
I've already said $350 million of the costs are associated with COVID. Those are going to continue to wind down.
We'll jump back to Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I just want to be very clear. There's a few inaccuracies in Iain's statements there, but of course, the one thing I want to be very clear on, the better paycheck guarantee it will not benefit any corporation. Sorry, guys, but that's you figure out your taxes, pay your taxes, that money's gone. Under this policy, you'd then be able to apply for half of it back on the condition that you give it to the working families of this province. Not the 20% in the boardroom, the 80% working families. So the money goes to the government, it's gone, you get it back, you give it to your working families. We need to raise the wages of the working families of this province. That's absolutely a necessity. And the reality is, yes, we have to spend a lot on healthcare. Guess why? It's been neglected for 8 years, got worse and worse and worse. The only thing that I'm saying that's different from Iain is that I'm willing to be honest, pick up the bill that's already sitting on the table and say, I will deal with this. I'm not going to ignore it anymore.
All right, I think we'll cut it off there. Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, we're going to jump on to the next question. I know that all of the parties have a large number of female candidates running. Sadly, that's not represented on the stage, even by the Chamber. Women were disproportionately affected by the pandemic. How will you support women in small business going forward? And I think we're back to Iain to start.
Sure. I think obviously the number one thing we can do is support subsidized childcare. So the universal childcare agreement that we worked on in earnest over the last number of months, we're very proud of, to be able to secure the kind of funds, over $600 million secured, and we put $40 million in it to cut childcare fees in half next year and then get to $10 a day childcare. I think that is an integral piece that builds on our pre-primary program. It's important that we have those social supports. It's an economic foundational piece to our economic strategy as we build back more equitable, and we need to continue to support our small businesses, and we've been doing so by reducing their taxes, and we're doing so by allowing them to access more digital supports, and we need to ensure that with this recovery, this time, that we make sure that every Nova Scotian has an opportunity to succeed.
Thank you very much. Tim. Sorry, if you'd like me to repeat the question.
No, it's okay. Yeah, thank you. And,
okay.
And you're absolutely right that women did disproportionately bear the brunt of the pandemic. Absolutely no question about that. Childcare for sure, and we'll obviously work with Prime Minister Trudeau and the federal government on the deal that he's brought forward to Nova Scotian, just like anyone else on this stage would. So childcare is critical. Obviously, long-term care is critical as well, because we know with aging parents, people are having to leave the workforce to caregive. That's a big issue. We need long-term care beds in this province. We put forward a very ambitious program to build 2,500 new single rooms and put the money in there to staff it with 2,000 additional healthcare professionals to look after our parents. So that we can be in the workforce and productive. Those are the types of investments that Iain has referred to as over-investing in our seniors. It's not our seniors. It's all of us, because you can't be in the workforce when you have to stay home and caregive. So we're being very upfront with the investment that is required. There's an investment required in childcare. There's an investment that's required in long-term care. We put it all on the table. We put it all on the table. We're not there's no lack of transparency with us. Maybe it's my accounting background and my focus on the details. But certainly the programs I've talked about, the Nova Scotia Loyal, the Better Paycheck Guarantee, will grow the economy, will create opportunities, and everyone will be able to participate in those. But we got to be honest about
I think we'll cut it off right there, but thank you very much, Tim. And now on to Gary. Women were disproportionately affected by the pandemic. How will you support women in small businesses going forward?
Well, I do want to say first that this is an historic election. This is the first election in the history of our province where a party has brought forward a province-wide slate, a majority of whom are women or gender diverse. We are very proud to be that party, and this is reflected in our platform, where we propose that in government we will direct significant investments to those parts of the economy of care where in the economy of care we know that the largest part of the workforce is women. So this is in the area of long-term care. This is in the area of home care. This is particularly in the area of child care. The pandemic, one of surely the key lessons that has come to us out of the pandemic is the absolutely essential place of childcare in the functioning of the economy. And therefore, the investments in childcare that we're talking about, in addition to those that Mr. Rankin has referred to establish before and after school free school-based care for elementary and pre-primary children. This is directed towards maintaining and developing the capacity of women to make an income for their families by entering into the labor force.
That's great. Thank you very much. Would anyone like to address any of the comments made by another leader? Yes, Gary.
Is it in order to refer to something that was said in the previous question? I want to.
It certainly is. It's your 1 minute.
Oh, thank you. So I want to respond briefly to what Mr. Houston has said about the so-called better paycheck guarantee. I think this is an ill-considered program. Mr. Houston has mentioned about accountants. I think its primary impact will be a great job creation program for accountants. We maintain the fundamental principle that the road to economic recovery requires us to have our corporations in Nova Scotia do two things. They must pay their taxes and they must pay properly their employees. This is a proposal that will allow corporations to make a decision between these two. I think this is ill-considered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burrill. Mr. Houston.
Sure, why not, I guess.
Okay.
Look, we have to grow our economy, and there are tremendous opportunities for this province. We will see a return to regional manufacturing. We've all seen supply chain disruptions, whether it's COVID itself, whether it's canal, whether it's whatever it is. There will be a return to regional manufacturing. We're going to produce more food. We're going to produce more PPEs, things like this. So there's tremendous opportunity for regional manufacturing in this province. But we need to be competitive. And the Better Paycheck Guarantee is directed at working families, making sure we raise the wages, but has the added benefit of making this a jurisdiction that will be attractive. Because people want to go where they can work with government, where they see a government that's innovative, where they see a government that understands the challenges that the risk takers of this province take every single day. We are putting innovative ideas forward. That's what this province needs. More of the same is not going to get us anywhere than where we've already been. And that's not good enough for me. So we're putting the ideas out there.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tim. And on to Iain.
Well, more of the same will get us back to the best business confidence that this province has ever seen pre-pandemic. Now we're reducing on our unemployment rate again. We need to reduce regulatory barriers that businesses are facing right now. We continued to reduce red tape in this province. We have a new, most ambitious target that we've ever had that's endorsed by a number of business groups. We've reduced small business tax. That's where we need to get back to so that we can get our exports booming again. Our population is growing. It's at an all-time high. Record tourism seasons. Look at all the key performance indicators before we hit this pandemic. And this is our opportunity now to build back more equitably and more sustainably. That's what our major employers are talking about as well. Our climate goals are starting to align more and more. When I hear regional manufacturing, I think of some of our largest employers like Michelin, who also have a 2050 net zero target like we do. And that's why we need to have programs like the Innovation Rebate Program, so they get 25% back of their capital when they invest to become more sustainable. That's why we need to get off coal and ensure we have a program to ensure that we do that affordably.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to housing now. And this time we're starting with Gary. Gary, you'll be able to address the question first, and then on to Tim and Iain. Good communities provide a mix of housing types and costs for people of all life stages. In order to build whole communities, municipalities must have the ability to put incentives in place to encourage development for units that fit a variety of income levels. Will your government commit to giving more control to municipalities to implement inclusionary zoning and other proven municipal housing incentives?
Well, the answer is yes. We have offered legislation for and included in our platform the extending of the capacity to municipalities to be able to mandate the construction of affordable housing through inclusionary zoning. But I want to speak to the core element of this question, which is really the housing crisis we are having in the province. So candidates across the province are going door to door and hearing every hour from people who are in fear. and are in distress. A big part of this stems from the government's failure to actually build the number of units that have been required. They built less than 200 units in over 8 years. This was a great failure. But the core of the distress is the fear that with the end of the state of emergency, rent control is going to be lifted, and we're going to be in a place again where the market is going to drive rents to such a place that people are going to lose their homes. This is our starting point. The fear and the pain of people who are in this situation, which leads us in the NDP to say that we have a majority of jurisdictions in our country where people have protection from sudden, dramatic rent increases through rent control, and we ought to have this for the people of our own province who at the moment are standing before this real distress and fear.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Burrill. On to Tim.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Gary. I do admire your passion for the housing crisis is real. But what I would say is it's a complicated issue. And if rent control was the single bullet that would solve it, then I'd be all on board with it. But it's a complicated issue, and the only solution to a housing crisis is more housing. So absolutely working with the municipalities on ways that we can facilitate more housing, working with not-for-profits, working with those in the industry and our realtors here to make sure that there's more housing. That is the solution. We need to build more houses. And there's lots that's holding us back from that. And one of the things that's holding us back is a shortage of skilled tradespeople. So we have in our policy, we've recognized that. We want more people here, as I've said. We need more young people because of our demographics, and we certainly need more skilled tradespeople here. So we put a policy forward that said if you're under 30 years old and you're working in the skilled trades, no personal provincial income tax on your first 50. We want young people getting into the trades. We want young people from other parts of this country moving here, the world moving here to participate in the trades and build more housing. But we also know that it's people call it affordable housing. It's attainable housing to me. And I spoke to a young couple in the Valley in their 20s. They both have good jobs. They can't afford to buy a home. So we need to get the wages up, and we need more housing stock. That is the solution to a housing crisis. It's not going to be overnight. But it can't be ignored anymore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Houston. Just a reminder, Iain, the question was, will your government commit to giving more control to municipalities in order to implement inclusionary zoning and other proven municipal housing incentives?
Yes, we will, along with the other recommendations from the Nova Scotia Housing Commission's report. I disagree with Gary, who is essentially against those recommendations. There was a clear recommendation in there after they had an opportunity to look at the evidence and look at how rent control in the long term will prevent investment in housing and prevent our ability to invest in old housing stock and increase our supply. It was a tool during the pandemic that I believed we needed in place. We are following the other recommendations, including inclusionary zoning. These are complex issues that require all orders of government working on. We have significant investments in rent supplements and other strategies, but we need to do more, and that's why we've announced the $25 million commitment that the Commission asked for to create 900 more spaces for housing. And that's part of how we will inject more supply into the system. Our platform goes on to look at the other recommendations on how we support private sector development of supply. That's why we've come out with rebating the provincial portion of HST when you have dedicated affordable housing units coming onto the market. That's why we've created a program for nonprofits so that the provincial government would provide a provincial guarantee so they have the capacity to buy buildings and keep them non-market oriented units on the marketplace. We'll support those types of recommendations that are coming from associations like the Affordable Housing Commission and private sector developers. This is going to take a partnership, and this is what happens when you have a booming population. These types of challenges are present, and we'll tackle them head on.
Thank you very much, Iain. Gary, for comment?
Yes, so Mr. Rankin has said something which is not true. He said that the NDP does not support the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Commission. We think it is full of wonderful recommendations and one mistake. And the mistake is for them to have recommended against permanent rent control. Look, yesterday I spoke to a woman. She's given me permission to tell you who her name is, Fatima Saeed in Fairview, who has been living in her home for 18 years, is now in a place of being forced by the market situation from her home, seeing that prices have gone up so very high, nowhere for her to go. And what she said to me was, why will our government not protect me? So this is all that we are saying, that the majority of Canadians are protected when they are in that situation. We are not. So I don't care what commission may or may not have said anything on the subject. The people of Nova Scotia deserve the same protections from sudden, dramatic, unsubstantiated rent increases that are enjoyed by a majority of people in our country.
And the reality is we have rent control right now, so that didn't solve that solution, that problem that Gary is referencing. What we need to do is use it as a tool right now, but it's clear the recommendations came from a wide representation from people from all over different interest groups at that table, and that's what we're moving forward with. We need more supply so that tenants have recourse, so that if they have an opportunity, so most landlords will not raise rent beyond what's reasonable. For those select few that do, we have to have protections in place for renters, and that's why you need to look at the whole recommendations as a suite of recommendations, including inclusionary zoning, giving municipalities the tools because they have planning under their jurisdiction, and investing in both nonprofit units and incentives for the private sector as well.
Thank you very much. Tim.
I think what's the issue of housing, what's happening in our healthcare system, these are all questions of government. Does government have vision or not? We have a government that's looking out to see what's coming. So we didn't have 10 cities 8 years ago. We didn't have this housing crisis 8 years ago. It's developed, and it's developed because the government either wasn't paying attention or wasn't focused on what was happening. And you can't, on the one hand, take credit for population growth, and then on the other hand, say, well, we don't have enough doctors because we didn't think of that. And on the other hand, say we don't have enough housing because we didn't think of that. Government has a responsibility to look at all kinds of moving parts. And in this province right now, for all of the incredible opportunities we have so much potential. We have to be clear about the challenges in housing, the challenges in healthcare. They were created by a government that just didn't see it coming. There's no more time for didn't see it coming. Let's start looking out and have a plan, and that's what we're all about in the PC Party.
Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, moving on to the next area, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. The questions will be to Iain, Gary, and Tim this time. So Iain, no issue during the pandemic was more relevant and overdue than the recognition in 2020 and 2021 than the exposure of systemic racism and the need to make significant changes in the public and private sectors to address the inequities in our society. How will your government continue to address these issues to make a sustained change, and what supports will you provide?
Essentially by listening. And yes, resources do need to be provided to community-led initiatives that have been working on this for decades. And we've started to do this through our new Office of Equity and Anti-Racism, which is driven by community. We have expanded that recently, and we have a number of initiatives underway, and we need to do much more because systemic racism is embedded in all of our institutions, frankly. So we've undergone a number of reviews looking at race-based data, and we're looking at how we can tackle the health system to ensure that we have better, more equitable access and outcomes when people enter into the system. And we have a number of initiatives ensuring that we have land titles granted to African Nova Scotians in the Preston communities and other African Nova Scotian communities. There's so much more work to do. We've banned street checks. We've created African Nova Scotian Justice Institute, which is led by community with a commitment to ensure that continues on. These are just some of the things, but there's so much work to do. And how we're going to be able to do it is working in collaboration with communities. How we're going to be able to do it is ensuring that there is better representation from our population in decision making. I'm proud of having more diverse candidates in this race. I'm proud when I had the opportunity when I became Premier to be able to hire more people from different communities at the table in the most senior positions in government. The first African Nova Scotian Public Service Commissioner being one of them. And we'll continue to ensure that there's more equitable access to programs because we are recovering right now. And this is our opportunity with this recovery to ensure we have dedicated seats in all these growth sectors.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Iain. On to Gary. Would you like me to repeat the question? No.
No, it's fine. Thanks.
Okay.
So there are some things that the government of Nova Scotia needs to do immediately. When it comes to justice for African Nova Scotians, we need to immediately implement all the recommendations in the Wortley report, including that we plug those loopholes that allow for the continuation in other forms of what is an illegal activity, street checks. It's also important, I think, that we should be convening in Nova Scotia a panel on environmental racism, and we should empower that panel to bring recommendations on compensation back to the legislature. And I also think that the time has come in our province when our government needs to step forward and take part in the great conversations of our era on the subject of reparations. And I want to say on the question of Indigenous justice that in 2015 the Truth and Reconciliation Commission laid out very clearly what they are called there the calls to action to provincial governments in Canada. And there are quite a number of them. And in the NDP, we brought forward a piece of legislation that said the government of Nova Scotia must respond to and implement those recommendations. 3 times we have brought that forward. 3 times the Liberals have failed to act on it. If we're able to form the government of the province, that will become the Truth and Reconciliation Commission law.
Thank you, Gary. And Tim, would you like me to repeat the question? Or?
No, good.
Okay,
thank you, Patrick. Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you, Anne, for those powerful words off the top. I won't say it as eloquently as you did, but I agree with you that government that is for the people must come from the people. So we need diversity in thought and diversity in background around all government tables. There's no question about that. So thank you. And but we can't just take symbolic actions. We need to take substantive actions. And I do give credit to Iain for some of the stuff that they've done, some of the actions they've taken. The African Nova Scotia Justice Institute is a good move, and some of the other ones. So I appreciate that. But we need to really look at the core of the issue, and that's start with education. I'm generally a product of the Nova Scotia education system. My father was in the military, so we moved around a lot, but most of my education was here in Nova Scotia. I didn't learn about things like residential schools. I didn't learn about some of the rich history that we have from our diverse groups in this province. So what we're focused on is working with Nova Scotians, working with diverse communities, but putting education right in the curriculum at all grade levels to make sure that we learn about our history, we learn about each other. I feel very, very strongly that knowledge leads to understanding, and understanding leads to kindness. And we need a lot more kindness in our society. So I'll be very focused on the education system.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I guess since Tim gave me a compliment, I'll extend the offer as well. So I agree. We could use a lot more ensuring that we have essentially a more outlook of what our own local history is here. I grew up in that system as well and haven't fully appreciated that slavery, and I think a lot of Nova Scotians haven't realized to the extent that slavery existed here. And that's why I was proud of Minister Ince for bringing the bill forward to recognize Emancipation Day, and that is an education moment for Nova Scotians to learn about our shared history there. We have more work to do. We brought in treaty education in schools, which is a really important piece to ensure that we have that, which is now extended permanently in our school system, working with Chief Leroy and other chiefs. And we certainly have a lot more work to do so that Nova Scotians can learn about all of our shared history, including Mi'kmaq, African Nova Scotians, and other communities that have been marginalized.
Thank you very much, Iain. Any other comments?
Nope. No compliment?
I'm just kidding. I'm full of compliments from my 2 friends. I'm sure they've heard many of them on multiple occasions.
Okay, all right. Well, we're just going to compliment each other. We'll keep moving along. On to some specifics in healthcare. A difficult or a large subject to talk about in total. But COVID has shone a light on the need for mental health supports of all ages. What is your plan to support Nova Scotians' mental and physical health? Iain, to start with you, and then Tim and Gary.
Really important issue, especially as we've gone through a very difficult period of time with the pandemic. That's been hard on Nova Scotians. One of the first things I did is looking at reorganizing our departments is create a new office within the Department of Health and Wellness, a new office of mental health and addictions with a new chief mental health officer of addictions too. So he's looking at an evidence-based approach here. What I think we need to do is ensure that whatever we come out with, that those services, new services and supports are sustainable in the long run. I can't say it more than I have already. We need to make sure that these investments are prudent and sustainable, and that's why we are creating targeted investments in single session therapy, more withdrawal hub units across the whole province, access for mental health walk-in clinics near regional hospitals so Nova Scotians get the right appropriate care where and when they need it. This is something that has been highlighted through the pandemic where we need to do more, and this government is committed to ensuring that we do have more appropriate supports beyond what exists today.
Thank you. Tim.
Thank you, Patrick. And investments in healthcare are prudent investments. There can be no question about that. And mental health care is healthcare. And in this province, if you break a bone or need stitches, you're going to get some quick health care. But we have real issues in mental health care. And so we need to address that. We need to be honest about it. As a tremendous cost on families, on communities, on places of employment. We know that 500,000 Canadians will miss work in any given week because of a mental health condition in either themselves or in their surrounding. So we need to address it. It's the right thing to do. It's important for the productivity of our economy as well that we provide care. So we're talking about a significant investment in mental health for sure, because in this province, if you have the resources, if you have the financial resources, you can generally get care from the private system. If you're reliant on the Nova Scotia Health Authority, you're going to wait. You're going to wait too long. So what we want to do is mobilize the resources of the province for the benefit of Nova Scotians. So we make universal mental health care. If you're working in private practice, we want you to help Nova Scotians. Use your qualifications, and we'll open up the billing code so you can bill the province. But we need to get people the care they need. It's the right thing to do, but it's really important to move this province forward, that people get the care. We can't let them suffer. We have to provide the care. So universal mental health care is a focus of ours.
Thank you very much for that. And Gary, what is your plan to support Nova Scotians' mental and physical health?
Well, I will offer a compliment to my colleagues to say that I think it is a positive thing about this election and an indication that we're in a better spot than we used to be, that all three parties have chosen to make mental health and mental health investments and care priorities in their platform. Because we have a terrible inequity in our province at the moment, that if you have benefits or money and you're dealing with, let's say, anxiety or depression, you can go to private psychological services. It's about $150 an hour, and you can be seen today, or if not today, tomorrow. But if you don't have that kind of financial position and you go to the public services, you wait for weeks and often for months. And it's important for us to remember that this is not the case in New Brunswick. And it's not the case in PEI, and it's not the case in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we have to bring our mental health care up to that standard. It's time for us to do that. We propose a network of 14 clinics across the province to provide same-day, next-day mental health care to the people of the province on the basis of nothing more than the health card you've got in your pocket.
Thank you very much for that. Any comments on that? Okay, I'm going to jump on to... Oh, yes, Gary, sorry.
Yes,
keep rolling along.
I might... I want to just comment briefly on what Mr. Houston has said about the program platform in his party about extending billing codes to the private psychological services sector. In my judgment, this is an ill-considered proposal. It will not be in any way cost-effective. In public mental health services, our average cost for an hour of treatment or so is in the area of $80. In private psychological services, it's more than double that. Not only will it not be cost effective, it will also actually have the opposite than the desired effect. Because if we provide billing numbers for MSI to private psychological services, we will create a situation where there will be an exodus of therapists and counselors and mental health care providers from the public and into the private sector, and we will have worse wait times than we have today. So I see this as one of those ideas that sounds good in its simplicity, but in fact is misdirected.
Okay, thank you, Gary. And understandably, Mr. Houston has a comment.
Well, listen, we're going to work with the private practitioners to make sure that those fees are appropriate, but we can't ignore the problem. We need to mobilize all of the resources to get people the care they need. I actually think that with a government that sends the message that they're going to invest in healthcare, they're going to take it seriously, they're going to respect those working in healthcare in general, that we will see an increase in healthcare professionals, including mental health practitioners, moving to this province because they will see, well, they know about our quality of life, but they will see a government that will support them, respect them, and is serious about investing in healthcare, and they'll want to be part of this province. So I don't agree. I think it will be a major increase in the amount of practitioners that we have in this province. So the message that I want to send to those working in healthcare across the spectrum is change is coming. Hope is on the way. We will work with you. We will partner with you to make sure that Nova Scotians get the health care they need.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rankin, anything?
Well, I'll just say that through the pandemic, we had opportunities that we explored and we are able to tap into, which is e-mental health. And so we made significant investments. We will invest where required, and we've proven that through the pandemic. We have increased healthcare every single budget, and mental health needs more attention. We had the largest increase of mental health in our history in the last budget, and we're prepared to do more, as you see in our platform. We brought wait times down to from an unacceptable level down to less than 20 days in Cape Breton, and that was an example of how e-mental health supports were able to be used effectively. Virtual care is part of the solution across the spectrum, but it's not going to replace all access points. But we're proud to be able to work with providers and ensure that we have not only access to psychologists and psychiatrists that are challenging to recruit in rural areas nationally, but we have access to these types of sites like the walk-in mental health clinics that Gary referenced. We're prepared to do that too, adjacent to our regional hospitals to ensure that Nova Scotians get access to the appropriate care they need.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the environment. We're running short of time. We will not get through all of the questions, so I apologize to everyone for that. On to climate change or the environment. And the order will be Gary, Tim, and Iain. How will your party prioritize climate change against economic recovery pressures? So, Gary, that's to you first.
Well, two things. First, 2030 is the great point of reference. We propose a program by which we change our limit on greenhouse gas reductions to 50% below 1990 levels by 2030. We propose that we move to 90% renewables production by 2030 and that we get off coal by 2030. But I want to say about the question that it really kind of presupposes a way of thinking about the environment and economy that is no longer relevant in the present moment. This notion that somehow the economy and the environment are to be counterposed to one another. We know that one of the great directions of investment capital in the last couple of years has been away from the world of fossil fuels and into the world of renewables. And so a great deal for our next economic chapter's success is going to depend on our being able to environmentally align ourselves with that economic change.
Thank you very much. And Tim.
Thank you. And it is about finding the balance. There's no question. We need a healthy environment to have healthy people, and we need healthy people to have a healthy economy. So we have to find the balance. And in the PC Party, we've always been good at finding that balance. And I go back to the Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act, which set the roadmap for this province, set the targets, and successive governments have followed it. In fact, Steve McNeil actually talked about this piece of legislation. I heard him in a podcast recently when he was asked, why has Nova Scotia done so well on reducing emissions and protecting land and stuff? And he said there was a piece of legislation that led the way for the government. It was 2007 legislation. He didn't say it was PC legislation, but it was. So we have to find that balance. And what I would say is, when you look at the types of policies, certainly we've in our platform renewed targets. 20% of land by 2030, and the emissions reductions. And we're on the same page in a lot of places as my colleagues up here. But then when you look at a program like the Nova Scotia Loyal, which will encourage significant buy local, which is a huge impact in improving our environment and just our quality of life overall. So we have to find the balance, and we have to work together. Nova Scotians have done the best, particularly on the environmental file, when we've worked together. And I look forward to working with my colleagues here, but Nova Scotians, to find that right balance.
Thank you very much, Tim. And Iain, how will your party prioritize climate change against economic recovery pressures?
So we are leaders in the country with the most ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets. We are going to be the first province in the country to be net zero before 2050, and we have a number of ways that we want to get there, and one of them is by bringing more renewable energy onto the system, and increasing our efficiency programs, a model that leads the country that other provinces have emulated. We have tremendous opportunities in this field. This is an economic opportunity of a lifetime, and that's what economists are speaking about, and how we can use that and channel these investments to achieve the win-win-win. So we have better environmental outcomes, reducing emissions, so that we create the jobs of tomorrow. And that's why we're coming out with the most ambitious investment in training in decades in this province. The part that's different about our strategy is we recognize these growth opportunities, and we need to train construction workers, we need to train all different types of trades that are going to be involved in ensuring that we capitalize on these green jobs, the sustainable revolution people call it, to ensure that we're building out and we're making our buildings net zero. This is how we're going to continue to lead in this province, and we're going to tackle the other tough issues, as we did with environmental racism at Boat Harbour, as we did with other issues, ensuring that we had the courage to say no to hydraulic fracturing. The Conservative Party has been back and forth, I have to say, on this, and I haven't been asked about environmental issues by that leader in the legislature when he was eager to get back in the House one time. Instead, he chose to make fun of our environmental issues and the way that we need to get off of combustion engine vehicles, our electric vehicle rebates, and then we're going to continue to be consistent.
All right. I think Gary had his hand up first.
We face two crises, the biodiversity crisis and the climate change crisis. But it defies credibility to me that Mr. Rankin should present his government and himself as champions of this world of climate change and biodiversity, when in fact Mr. Rankin gutted the government's own signature biodiversity bill. So I will cede my remaining 30 seconds to allow him the opportunity to answer the question, how can you be taken seriously as an environmentalist and an advocate for climate change, having gutted and eviscerated this important biodiversity piece of legislation?
That legislation Gary voted for, and we worked with groups. There were a number of concerns that were brought up, and landowners and other important sectors said, we want to work with you. Can we start with a voluntary aspect to the private land piece and focus on Crown first, which was always our intent. So we passed an act, the first of its kind, not only in the country, but North America. I'm proud of our caucus for making sure we did that. We rejected the amendments that the Conservative Party brought forward that were trying to gut the act. It was a balanced act. We brought it forward. We're proud to be able to support it, as we are proud to protect over 150 pieces of land across this province. We need to ensure that we do tackle the dual crisis of biodiversity loss and climate, and that's why we called for the emergency debate previous. And I was the one in our caucus that said we need to have an emergency debate and have this because it's really important to future generations. But that is just one part of how we tackle this really important issue, and we're going to continue to make sure that we work with Nova Scotians, and that was the result of that very important bill.
Thank you very much. And Tim.
Thank you. First off, the first time Iain referred to me as the leader of the Conservatives, I thought it was a mistake, but the second time it was clearly the intent. But obviously there's no leader of any Conservative party on this stage. I'm the leader of the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservative Party, and I know politics is about branding, so I appreciate the effort, but let's be clear on that. And the record of the Nova Scotia PC party on the environment is certainly one that I'm very proud of.
Chris is campaigning for you, isn't he?
And I don't know who's campaigning for who, but I'll work with Trudeau, I'll work with Jagmeet Singh, I'll work with anyone who's the Prime Minister of this country, because I'm only focused on Nova Scotians. That's the only thing I focus on. And what I would say on the environment is we put forward a very clear platform on how we can build on what we've done together with the EXPO legislation and move this province forward. And I think I agree with Gary. It's a bit, you can't really call yourself an environmentalist and do what you did at Owl's Head. You can't have it both ways. You got to be one or the other. You got to walk the walk. That's what we do.
I think we'll stop there. Thank you all very much. We've now come to the point where we will have 1.5 minutes for our closing statements, as our time has grown short. We will be starting with Gary, and then Tim, and then Iain, again in a random draw. So Gary, if you'd like to give us your closing comments.
Thank you. Well, a great deal is at stake in this election, in the choice between two paths that is before the people of our province. If we in the NDP are given the opportunity to govern, permanent rent control will be implemented within a month of the new government swearing in. And if we are not, permanent rent control will not happen because the Liberals and the Conservatives do not support it. And If we in the NDP prevail in this election, Nova Scotia's greenhouse gas emission reduction commitment will be changed to 50% below 1990 levels by 2030, and if not, this also will not happen. And if we are elected, the minimum wage in Nova Scotia will become $15 an hour on the road to a living wage. And if not, there is every expectation that our province will continue, as we have been while Mr. Rankin has been Premier, to be the province with the lowest median income in all our country. These are before us now serious choices. And these are amongst our party's serious commitments. It is time for something better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on to Tim.
Thank you, Patrick. This is a wonderful province. It's always been a wonderful province. So why then do we continue to spin our wheels? Frank Sobey once said, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. And I think the state of healthcare in this province alone tells us we're moving backwards. And getting by is not good enough. And even getting back to where we were with the state of healthcare is not good enough. We have so much potential here. We just need to move the province forward. And to do that, we truly need a new government, one that recognizes that our most valuable resource is our people, and a failure to invest in our people is a failure to lead. We can put Nova Scotia on a path to financial sustainability and fix the crisis in healthcare, mental health care, and seniors care. We can be proud of and support our traditional industries and build an environmental plan that fights climate change. We can be a magnet for doctors, investors, students, tourists alike, and remain proud of our traditions and our heritage. We can have all of these things here. And as Premier, that's what I'll be fighting for. I will go toe-to-toe with every jurisdiction in this country to attract people here, to build their lives here. It's time for Nova Scotia to move beyond political sound bites during a campaign to actual real solutions. We have the plan to get it done. I hope you'll come with us. We can do a lot in this province.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. And Iain, to wrap us up.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you all for being here. It's clear that from what we heard today, that this election is about how we build on the momentum we have right now to recover from the pandemic. If we get that right, we can protect our vital services and expand our support for Nova Scotians with programs like childcare, like increasing affordable housing so people have an affordable place to live. A strong economic recovery supports our plan to attract more doctors and health care services, like those that are waiting to come in that are disrupted by the pandemic. A strong recovery is the foundation so that we can continue to rebuild and build more modern healthcare facilities across the province. Our plan is designed to ensure that we have the workforce through more skills and training for the jobs of today and tomorrow. Our proposed investments for post-secondary education will address skill shortages and make education more accessible. And our climate plan confronts the climate emergency head-on. Jobs will be created in renewable energy and increasing retrofits for efficiency across the province. Our plan is focused on getting our economic recovery right. And before I conclude, I just want to ask everyone to please continue to respect public health protocols. We see other provinces are opening up completely, but we need to stay the course, and we will get to the final phase soon. So get tested and get vaccinated, and on August 17th or beforehand, I ask humbly for your support and for you to support our Liberal candidates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iain. And a round of applause for all of our candidates. Thank you very much, Gary, Iain, and Tim, for participating in today's event. And I'd like to thank all of the candidates who are running. Your entire teams, they're out there working very, very hard, as I know you are, to earn the votes of Nova Scotians. Our members certainly appreciate you taking the time to outline your priorities for the business community. I'd like to thank NSAR for supporting today's conversation, and of course our host partner, the Downtown Halifax Business Association. And thank you to our community partners, the Black Business Initiative, National Public Relations, Stuart McKelvey. Thank you all, and all of you. Thank you for joining us and hearing from the candidates, and thank you, of course, to everyone on Facebook and on our website. This will be available online over the next number of hours if you'd like to take a look. Make sure you are registered to vote, get informed about the party platforms, and get ready, as Iain said, for August 17th. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you all soon. Thanks very much.